Problem to have is when everyone likes each other so much that we have to restart the service timer 2 or 3 times because you're all talking to each other out in the lobby. That's a good problem to have. Hey, we're glad that you are here. If this is your first time, or maybe you've just come a few times, we'd love for you in the seats around you or some cards. We'd love for you to fill one out. And on your way out, you can stop by our welcome table, which is at the far end of the lobby. We have a gift for you just to say thank you for being here. And I promise it's a good gift. It's not like a cheesy cross magnet or something to put on your fridge. It's a good gift. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but sometimes things come out. Hey, man, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for what you did for the shoes, man. 50-something pair of shoes are going down to Urban Outreach to be able to put shoes on the homeless feet. And, man, you guys just stepped up to that challenge so well. So thank you so much for doing that. And, again, I want to say thank you also to Fruit Cove, the church that's been here helping us the past few days. I say helping us. They've been doing everything. We just show up, and they've taken care of everything. Thank you so much, men and women and teenagers who've come from. Yeah, you can cheer for them. Yeah. What a sacrifice to give up some of your vacation time to come out here and do that. We're thankful for you. Today, we are finishing our series called Words to Live By, where we have been in the book of Proverbs. We will be in the book of Proverbs again today as well. And if you don't know about Proverbs, just a little information for you. It was written by a man by the name of Solomon. And you may have never heard of him, but his father, his name was David. David and Goliath. Maybe you've heard that story before. David has a son. His name's Solomon, and he is the king of Israel. And he rules Israel for about 40 years. That's how long he's the king. And he's a great king. And this was about 1,000 years before Jesus walked the earth, just to give you a little time frame, a little background of when all of this happened. And what the Bible tells us about Solomon is that he was the wisest man to ever live, that he prayed for wisdom. God gave him wisdom, and he was the wisest man to ever live. In fact, he was so wise that other rulers from other nations that didn't worship God, would come to him and ask for advice. And word got out, man, this guy knows what he's talking about. He is a wise leader. And so they would come to him for his advice. And Proverbs is really a collection of his wise sayings. He didn't write all of it. He wrote most of it. But it's a collection of his thoughts, collection of his life experience, the wisdom that he wants to pass down to his sons and to others that include you and I thousands of years later. And there's so many topics in the book of Proverbs that he covers, but there's a few that he comes back to over and over again. He repeats them over and over again. He talks about them a lot. There's a few main themes, and so that's what we have been doing in this series, is coming back to the book of Proverbs to see what he says about those main themes. Now, listen, if you're here today and you're just checking church out, maybe you came with a friend, they promised you free lunch afterwards, make sure they take you somewhere good. You haven't signed up to be a follower of Jesus. What we're going to talk about today, I think, is still beneficial for you. I think you still will get something out of it if you put these principles into practice. I think it would still be good for your relationships. But if you've surrendered your life to Jesus, if you have called on Jesus to be your Savior, then you will see in a moment as we begin to get through this that, one, we don't really have a choice in this, that this is a commandment for us, and that it's not just important because it's important eternally. This matters in eternity, and we're going to see that in a minute. So we want to pay attention to this because it's not just nice to know for those of us who have surrendered to Jesus. It really matters both for us and the people around us. And so today we're going to be talking about the importance of our words, the power of our words, what we say. And this is important because we're in a talking culture, aren't we? We're in a culture where everybody loves to talk. I mean, we talk, I just said it earlier, like, you guys are talking so much. We can't get everybody in here to start the service because we love to talk, and that's okay. You may be thinking, you know somebody who talks too much, right? No elbows right now. Don't look at your husband or wife, okay? Just keep that inside. But we are talking culture. We talk so much. The University of Arizona a few years ago did a study, and there's been several studies, but this is kind of the most consistent number that comes out, that the average person says about 16,000 words a day. 16,000. Now, that's the average. Some of you say 12, right? Like, you're just hard to talk to. Some of you, by breakfast, you've gotten 16,000 out, right? Like, you go. But 16,000 is the average number of words that we say a day. And in today's society, those are just the spoken words. Like, we talk in other ways, don't we? Because most of us all have a phone, and we text other people. I discovered this as I was studying, that if you have an Apple phone, if you have an Apple device, Apple processes about 200,000 messages per second. That's not even the number of words. That's just the messages. And this study's a few years old. 200,000 messages per second, which equals about 80 billion per day. 80 billion messages. And you may be thinking, yeah, that's my teenager. That's how 2 billion of those came from them. 80 billion text messages a day. If you use the pretty common, the popular app called WhatsApp, where you text other people with that, WhatsApp has 65 billion texts go out a day. Like, that's a lot of words. That's a lot of language. And that's just on Apple and WhatsApp. You folk who use Android, we don't really know what you do. We're not sure why you're still using that. I think they can text. I'm not positive. I've seen you pull those things out, and I don't know what you're doing with them. But it's not even including those, okay? In fact, today, if you were to add these up and you were to throw in Android and everybody else, it would easily be over 200 billion messages a day. That's a lot of words. We are a society who use words. I was going to play a game where I was going to put some words up there and ask you if it was a real, actual word or not. But I couldn't do it because we use words so much that some places are like, yeah, we're just going to call it a word. Other places are like, no, we're official. We're not going. Like, there was no consensus. It's just basically, if it gets texted or tweeted over 7 times, they throw it in the dictionary and now it's a new word. And there were some crazy ones in there. We use words. Words are not just used a lot, but we remember these words too, don't we? We remember words. We are going to play a little game here this morning. Maybe you can remember some of these quotes. You may not know who said them, but they're probably familiar. The first one is this: I came, I saw, and I conquered. Does anybody know that? Caesar. Yeah, exactly. Julius Caesar. You get bonus points today. All right, the next one is this. What's the next one? Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Does anybody know who said this one? Oh, this is a tough one. Who said this one? Thomas Edison. Yeah, that's a good one. So you're like, yeah, Thomas, I knew it. What about this next quote? You remember this? 77 years ago. You remember this one, right? Abraham Lincoln. None of you were even there for this, and you know these words, right? Maybe a couple of you were around, but most of you were not. What about the next one? Here we go. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Anybody know this? Winston Churchill. I heard it whispered over there. All right, that's good. Winston Churchill. That's a quote that many people have said. We've got another one here. I have a dream. Yeah, we know those words. None of us were at that rally, but we know the words because they're powerful. Or this last one from a great philosopher. Oh, no, not the last one. We have this one. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Everybody know this one? Neil Armstrong. I know you weren't on the moon when he said this, okay? But you know these words. And then we have this last one from a great philosopher, really. Anybody? Yeah, the Terminator. Yeah, he said that. We remember that. Words are powerful. We don't just use them, we remember them. They impact us. You remember words that your parents said to you when you were a kid. And maybe you don't remember the specific words, but you remember the tone in which they said them. You remember how they delivered them. Maybe you remember a coach and how they spoke to you. And you don't remember the technique he was teaching. You just remember that he kept saying something to you over and over again. You remember how he said it. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe you've heard this phrase before. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but what? That's the worst saying in the world, isn't it? Because it's not true. It's not true. In fact, if I took a poll in here today, how many of you have gotten a broken bone from a stick or a stone? I doubt many hands would go up. But if I asked how many of you have been hurt by words, all of us would raise our hands. Because words are powerful. Words matter. Words mean something. When you were born, somebody called somebody to tell them all about this new life. Like, you couldn't wait to tell. And then as you grow, what are we waiting on? That very first what? That first word. When a baby's going to say my first word. Guys, if you haven't had babies yet, I'm going to give you some advice that was given to me. Although it is always a race, it's always a competition, and you want them to say dada first, teach them to say mama first. Because in the middle of the night, when things have gone bad, You can roll over and say, I would go, but she clearly wants you, okay? My wife is not in here right now, so don't tell her that's my philosophy. When you got married, you stood and you looked at somebody, and in front of a crowd, you said what? Your wedding vows, which are what? Words. You talk to each other at your funeral. I know none of you have been to your funeral yet, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. People are going to gather in a room like this. Somebody is going to walk up, maybe a couple people, maybe a lot of people if you're a really nice person, and they're going to come up and they're going to do what about you? Talk. They're going to talk about you. They're going to use words and tell stories about you. This is kind of crazy, but your saddest and happiest moments in life have all been accompanied by words. They have. The moments of joy you've talked about, the moments of sorrow you've cried and talked about, words last because words are powerful, and that's a good thing. God intended for words to be that way. Like, why are we talking about words today? What does that have to do with following Jesus? What does that have to do with Christianity? Almost everything. Words have been at every stage in our redemptive history since the beginning of time, since man was here, even before man was here, from God's creation to man's fall to Christ coming to earth. God is there. He has not been silent. In Genesis 1, it says, and then God said. God created things by speaking, not with stuff, but with words. He created with words. He spoke things into existence because his words are powerful. They bring life. 2 chapters later in Genesis 3, there's a serpent who goes to Adam and Eve, and the serpent to Adam and Eve says, did God really say that? He uses words to deceive them, to enter sin into the world, because words are powerful. They bring death. You fast forward into Matthew 27. All of Scripture in between speaks of God. People speak. We see the power of his words. And then we see Jesus here. And on Matthew 27, he's on the cross. And people are shouting, crucify him. Crucify him. There's crowds shouting. They're using their words to bring death. Matthew 28, Jesus has come back to life. He is with his disciples and he's with other people. And he stands in front of them and he says to them, go make disciples. Words are powerful. They bring life. You fast forward to the end of our Bible in Revelation. John is recording what is to come. He's telling us what is going to happen in the future, and he shares what he sees. And in Revelation 21, John says this. He says, I heard a loud voice, the voice of Jesus. And it says in verse 5, look, I am making everything new. Jesus is saying this. He is proclaiming this. I am making everything new. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Now, I don't know about you, but I get excited about those words. For Jesus, who I've surrendered my life to stand and say, I'm the beginning and end, I'm making everything new. I get excited by those. And those are words. Now, had he stood and said, guys, I'm trying. It's really hard down there. I'm not sure I'm going to follow him. Right? It's still words. But words are powerful. Words mean something. They matter to us. They always have. We parent through our words. We marry because of words. Guys, the vows that you gave to your wife, she married you in part because of those promises. Had you stood in front of her and said, honey, listen, I promise that I'm going to watch a lot of football. That's where you're going to find me most times. And I promise no matter what, I'm really never going to pick up my dirty clothes. They're just going to be laying everywhere. And I commit to you on this day that you're mostly going to have to parent our kids. Guess what your wife would not have done? Married you, okay? You're lucky already that she said yes, okay? I am too. She would not have, because words are powerful. We operate our businesses based on the words we say and how we say them. And ultimately, we need to know this about our words. Ultimately, our words give life to others, or our words bring death to others. That's how powerful they are. They bring life to others, or they bring death to others. In Proverbs 18, that's our key text for today. It says this in Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Death and life are in the power of the words that we speak. If you speak life into others, you are speaking encouragement and hope and love and peace into their life. You're instructing them. You're speaking unity and wisdom into their life. But if you speak death, it's through anger, it's through jealousy, and it's through gossip and racism and violence and judgment. You're speaking death into people's lives. Our words give life and death to others. We can't ignore the words that we speak. We also can't excuse the words we speak. We can't say things like, hey man, I just tell it like it is. Hey man, I'm just keeping things real with you, just so that we can excuse saying things we should not say. No, what we are doing is either giving life or giving death to the people around them. We are destroying them. Do we speak without thinking? Do we control our words through wisdom? I know there's so many days in my life that I say the first thing that comes to mind. I did it this morning about the magnet. Sometimes I just say what pops into my mind. And most of the time, I shouldn't have said it. It's not something that brought anything good to the situation. I should have kept it to myself. Maybe you can relate to that. Now, that's not how I want to be. I don't want to use my words carelessly. Those are not the words I want to speak. And so I have to ask, how do I speak life into people? And in Proverbs, we see some encouraging ways, some ways that we're encouraged to give life to other people instead of destroy them. And so we're going to show why our words are important and how we can breathe life. The first thing is this, is giving life through our words means this: we encourage people often. That we encourage people often. You know the conversation you've had with a friend or maybe a family member, maybe a complete stranger, where you left feeling encouraged. You left feeling like, man, I like that guy. I like that lady. Man, they were encouraging. They were good to speak to. But you also know the conversations that you've had that you leave thinking, I hope I never have to see that person again. Right? Like that was a hard conversation. You left feeling frustrated. You left angry, maybe embarrassed. Maybe you left feeling hopeless. You know those conversations. Encouragement is a great and really honestly easy way to speak life into somebody. It takes a second to say something encouraging. And if you know them, it just takes paying attention to their life to speak some encouraging words to what is going on. I remember when I was in college, I spoke at summer camps. And so every week I was in a different location for 10 weeks. And on Saturday mornings, we would load up all of the camp stuff into a big budget rental truck. And we would all get in a 15-passenger van and drive about 7 to 10 hours away to a new location. And each week at camp, there were a few hundred kids there and all the counselors. And one of the things we would give all the adults was a survey. We'd ask them how the camp was. And we asked them surveys about the food, about the recreation, about the sleeping arrangements, about the music, everything. And one of the things we asked was about the messages, about were they challenging? Were they convicting? You know, how did the messages speak to you? And we would give them these surveys. And on the van ride, my staff would always go through these surveys. And we'd pull out. We want to get better every single week. We'd want to grow. And I remember, I did this for 2 summers, for 10 weeks, so hundreds and hundreds of surveys. And I only remember one survey that I ever got about the message. And this is what they said on that part of the service that was asking if the message was challenging or helpful. All they wrote was, I've heard better speakers. That's it. Now, my staff didn't let me forget that. It was taped to the front of the van. It was taped in my room. It was taped everywhere. That's it. That's all they said. I've heard better speakers. I wanted to know who wrote that so bad. I wanted to go to them and be like, hey, you didn't even ask the question. Answer the question. It wasn't about me. It was about it was a message challenge. Was I a good speaker? I'm 20 years old. I'm probably not the greatest speaker you've ever heard, And if I am, you should probably get out more. But I remember that survey. I've heard better speakers. Now, what if they had encouraged me instead? What if they had spoken life into me instead? Here's what we know about encouragement. Encouragement draws people in. Criticism pushes people away. You want to impact somebody? You want to influence somebody? You want to make a difference in somebody's life? It begins with encouraging them. The writer of Proverbs says it this way in Proverbs 12:25. Anxiety in a person's heart weighs it down, but a good word cheers it up. A good word cheers them up. Do you speak into people's lives? Have you had people speak into your life where your words bring anxiety? Where they leave anxious, they leave worried, they leave concerned, they leave nervous about things? Or do you breathe life into people's life? Do you breathe life when you speak into them? And listen, it's not just good for you to speak into their life so that it helps them. Look what it says in Proverbs 16:24. Pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the taste, and health to the body. And we always, if you've read that before, think, hey, when I speak words, it's a honeycomb to someone else. And I'm sure that it is. But I also believe that it brings health to your body. I believe it is healthy for you, that your life looks differently the more pleasant words you are speaking to others. We need to encourage the people around us. How can you encourage? Who can you encourage around you today? But giving life through our words also means this. It means we respond to people gently. This is a tough one, isn't it? We respond to people gently. Solomon tells us in Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up wrath. A gentle answer turns away anger, but harsh words stir up wrath. Speaking softly to somebody in that heated moment, it turns away the anger. A gentle answer. And you say, Michael, what if it's a stupid question, right? A gentle answer is still needed. You say, Michael, but what if they're wrong? A gentle answer. That's what he says to do. You say, Michael, what if I've told them 10 times already? Parents are like, yeah, what about that? A gentle answer. What if they're just trying to push my buttons? What if they're just trying to get under my skin? They're trying to aggravate me? A gentle answer goes along. Michael, what if they're trying to run me over? They're trying to take advantage of me? A gentle answer. That's when it's needed the most. You'll like this one. Michael, what if they're saying what the Bible says isn't true? Then can I pounce on them? No, please don't. A gentle answer. Here's the thing about a gentle answer. We know that a gentle answer works because it's worked on us, hasn't it? A gentle answer has worked on you before. You've been in a situation where somebody responded. You've been in an argument and they stayed calm. They didn't get riled up. They didn't argue back. And it wasn't any fun. It calmed you down, didn't it? You've been with that family member that they're just in a screaming match. And then you've been with that one who stays calm and has that conversation. You've been at customer service before, right? And it's usually not a great experience. The ones that are good are the ones who stay calm with you and they answer you gently. We know a gentle response works because it has worked on us. We've been the recipient of it. We've seen it. David, who was Solomon's father, he says, he's writing it as he's king, and he says, may the words of my mouth be pleasing in your sight. He's praying that to God. He's saying, God, I want the words that I say to people be pleasing in your sight. And we should pray that. Especially in those intense moments, especially in those moments that are heated, especially when things are falling apart, especially when things aren't going our way. Our prayer should be, God, I want my words to be pleasing in your sight. And here's why. Because all of our words are in his sight. He knows what we say. He hears our words and how we speak to people. We speak life into people when we encourage them. We speak life into people when we respond gently. You want to be different to people around you? Respond gently. And listen, this doesn't mean that you have to have the Mr. Rogers approach to life where you can never get upset about something or you just have to let people run over you. This doesn't mean that. You can still stand up for things. You can still have serious conversations. You can still speak truth in love. And you can use words that are still pleasing in God's sight. We speak life into people when we encourage, when we respond gently. But here's the third way we speak life into people is by giving our opinions sparingly. Yeah, that's a trouble one, isn't it? Right? Giving our opinions sparingly. Here's why this is a problem. This is a problem. It's not that we have an opinion about everything. That's not the problem. The problem is that we think everyone needs to know our opinion about everything. Right? I've got an opinion about everything. If you ask me, I have an opinion, and I'm pretty sure it's right, and I can share it. But the problem is, you probably don't really care what my opinion is about most things, right? To be honest, I have opinions about things that I know nothing about. I've not done the research. I've never experienced, but I've got an opinion about it, right? We have opinions. And in today's society, right, we have opinions everywhere. How many times do we hear something or we see a post? Does this happen to you? I do this all the time. I see a post on social media, and I just feel this desire to chime in and let them know why they're wrong and what the right answer is. That's why my wife won't let me be on our neighborhood Facebook page. She said, no, you can't. I'll just tell you if you need to know anything on it. Because I've got an opinion. I like to share my opinion. I want people to know my opinion. I love what the writer of Proverbs 18 says in verse 2. A fool does not delight in understanding, but only wants to show off his opinions. He calls them a fool. They're worried about their opinions being known. This is an amazing verse because he doesn't say that a fool is someone who's wrong about everything. It says a fool is someone who just wants everybody to know what they think. Like they may think the right thing. Their opinion may be correct. But he says, listen, if that's all you care about is everybody knowing your opinion, you are a fool. Proverbs 10 gives us the reason why we shouldn't worry about getting our opinions out. This is a great verse. It says, when there are many words, sin is unavoidable. The translation is, if you talk a lot, you're going to get in trouble. That's what that means. If you're somebody who talks a lot, if I'm somebody who talks a lot, we are going to get in trouble. When I was growing up, I liked to argue. I like to debate stuff. As a little kid, I know if you know me, you're like, what? I'm so shocked, Michael. I did love to get into a good debate with someone, especially if there was like a rule that didn't make sense. You know, one of those just because I said so things with your parents. I remember being like, hey, Mom, that's not going to work. I need to understand this, you know. And I remember my mom used to tell me this all the time. She would say, Michael, the best thing you can do right now is be quiet. She used to tell me, I think she told me that last week on the phone. I was talking to her. I was like, I'm 40, Mom. The best thing you can do is be quiet. And as the older I get, the more I realize she was right. Sometimes the best thing that you and I can do is be quiet. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times that we need godly men and we need godly women to speak up and be loud and be heard, to speak up for what is true and what is right and to fight against injustices. But we also need the wisdom to know when those times are and when they aren't. Our words bring life. We encourage often. If we respond gently, if we offer our opinions sparingly, it brings life. But here's the question that you probably have. Why does this really matter? Why does any of this really even matter, what we say, especially today when everybody has an opinion? Right? Everybody has an opinion about everything. And really the philosophy is just deal with it. It's my right. I get to say what I want. I get to say when I want it. I get to say it how I want it. I get to say it to who I want to. Like, that is my right. Don't I have that right? Well, sure you do. But you have that legal right. You have the right to be able to speak however you want to speak. The problem is, here's the problem, is that our words don't just give life and death to others, but our words show life and death in ourselves. That's the problem with that philosophy. I can say whatever I want. It's not just that we give life and death to others, but it shows life and death in ourselves. Jesus talks about the importance of words, and it's not just the effects on other people that he talks about. He talks about what it reveals about us. Over in the Gospel of Matthew, where it's recorded Jesus' story, his life on earth, there's some Pharisees, which are just religious leaders. It was honestly the church people. It was the people who knew the laws the most. And they didn't like Jesus because he did things and said things that they didn't like and they didn't want to do and they didn't say. And so they've been following him around, trying to catch him in something because they wanted to arrest him. They wanted to charge him with some law that he broke so that they would have a reason to crucify him. And so they're following him around, and Jesus is with this young man who is sick, and he calls out an evil spirit out of this young man. He casts this evil spirit out and heals this young man. And so the Pharisees get together, and they're like, okay, how can we say he did something wrong here? And so they come back, and they have a spokesman, and the spokesman comes out and is like, the reason Jesus was able to do that is because he's working with Satan. He's on the same side as Satan. He's on the same team. And Jesus just blows that up. Jesus just really quickly destroys their argument there. And they had been doing this so much, trying to catch him and trap him, that he addresses it. And he turns to him and says, listen, you need to know, you're the religious leader, you're the church people, you're the people that say you love me. You need to know you're either with me or you are against me. You're either on my side or you're not on my side. There's no middle ground here. You're on my team or you're not on my team. And then he goes on to tell them this, and this is what applies to us today. This is what we take home today. In Matthew 12:34, he says, brood of vipers. That didn't mean a lot to us, but there's a lot of vipers rolling around back in the day, I guess. I don't know. Brood of vipers. How can you speak good things when you are evil? For the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. Clearly, he's tired of these men, and he tells them what we need to know, what they needed to know, but what we need to know about our words. And listen to me, please listen to me this morning. This is so much more than, hey, don't swear, and don't tell dirty jokes, and don't be angry, don't yell. It's so much bigger than that. It's not a list of things you can and can't say, and ways you can say them and can't say them. No. Jesus is saying what comes out of your mouth is an overflow of what is in your heart. The Bible uses a lot of words to describe the inner man. It uses mind, it uses emotion, it uses the word soul and spirit, it uses the word will. But they're all summarized under this kind of big basket word, heart. It's a well-developed theme all through the Bible from beginning to end where the heart is used over 1,000 passages. And the term heart means really the core of your personhood. It's the heart is the directional system. It's the steering wheel of your life. Jesus is not concerned. He did not give them a list of things to say and not say. He's concerned with their heart. He's concerned with what's in your heart because he knows that only what's in our heart is what comes out of our mouth. In other words, Jesus is teaching this. Jesus is teaching that we live out of our heart. We speak out of our heart. We live life out of what is inside us. In verse 35 in Matthew 12, he goes on, he says, a good person produces good things from his storeroom of good, and an evil person produces evil things from his storeroom of evil. What's on the inside is eventually what comes out always. When my wife and I were first married, we were living in base housing down in Panama City on Tyndall Air Force Base, and it was a little duplex. It was really our first place together, and we had some friends in the other side of it. And I remember one night something was wrong in our bathroom, and this base housing was old. Like I'm pretty sure George Washington housed some troops in there. Okay, back in the day, it was an old place, and our bathroom was like 6 by 6, and it was bright pink from the ceiling to the floor. Every tile in there was bright pink. It was just like when you walked in it, you just felt like you're like just consumed into this bright pink. And so one night my wife comes and says, honey, the toilet is not working in there. And we're newlyweds, right? And so I'm like, well, I'm going to be a handyman. I'm going to go in there and fix this thing. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I was looking for tires to kick because that's about all I know when it comes to stuff. And so I'm in there hitting it with a hammer and a wrench, you know. And my thought is, listen, if my baby wants a toilet that works, I'm going to give her the nicest things, all right? So she's going to have a toilet that works. So I'm hitting on this thing. She's sitting in the doorway talking to me, watching her man get after it. And I hit it somewhere, and water just starts spraying out of the toilet bowl into my face because I'm leaning over looking, which is not the best strategy to approach a toilet, okay? I'm leaning, and it just starts spraying in my face. And she starts laughing, and there's nowhere to go. It's pink tile. Like, I'm just sliding everywhere. I'm trying to hold it down. And she's in the doorway laughing. And I remember saying, I need you to leave right now because it was making me mad that she was laughing. And I was getting upset as I was getting sprayed. And this is why. You know I was so mad because I know what's in the toilet. You know what didn't spray out of the toilet that night? There were no Skittles. There were no rainbows. There were no stuffed animals. I'm not going to go into detail of what was coming out of that toilet, but you can figure it out, okay? Because what is on the inside eventually comes out. And nothing else is going to come out. It's going to be what's on the inside. The same is true for us. The same is true of you and me. And what we speak, what is on the inside will always make its way to the outside. If you only remember one thing, I want you to remember this. That our words announce to people outside what's happening on the inside. The way we talk to people, the way we engage with people, the way we speak to our kids, our parents, our families, our coworkers, our neighbors. It is announcing to people what is happening on the inside of us. And if we are devoted followers of Jesus, we need to know this. Our words should make people more interested in Jesus, not less. Right? How many people in my life have walked away from me less interested in Jesus because of the way I spoke to them? Our words should make people more interested in Jesus, not less. And Jesus goes on to tell the religious leaders there, he goes on to tell us that it's not just what's on the inside that comes out, but why it matters. He tells us in verse 36, I tell you that on the day of judgment, people will have to account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. Watch out. How many of my 16,000 words each day, how many of my part of that 2 billion texts, how many of my comments on social media are careless? How many of them do I not think through? What if they weren't careless, but careful? What if I didn't speak carelessly, but I put thought into it and I spoke carefully? What if it made people more interested in Jesus? What if the way you spoke to your kids pointed to the grace and love that Jesus had for them? How would that make your home look differently? What if the way you spoke to your wife, the way you spoke to your husband was full of encouragement? Even in that heated moment, you found a way to speak encouragement. How would that make your relationship look better? At work, what if we spoke differently? In the middle of conflict, what if we responded gently? How would our coworkers look at us when they're expecting us to blow up, when they're expecting us to get mad, when they're expecting us to spout off, and we respond gently? How would that look differently? How about this? What if we didn't use social media to give our opinions on every single thing? What if we kept some of those to ourselves? What if we were a church 8025, that seasoned our conversations with salt, with grace, through the words that we are saying to people? The people having a bad day, the people having a good day, the people who are being nice to us and mean to us, that we responded gently, that we encouraged them. What a difference we could make if we just those of us in this room, if just those of us in this room committed to speaking life-giving words for the next week, for the next month, if we committed to that, to think carefully about our words, what a difference it would make. But it all starts in our hearts. We can say the nice things for a while, but eventually what's in us is going to come out. It's always going to make its way out. What's in your heart, what's in my heart will eventually make its way to the surface. If we want to speak words of life to people, we have to begin by guarding what is in our heart. We have to begin by asking the question, what is in our heart? Our words announce to the people outside what is happening on the inside. And that's a big deal if you're a follower of Jesus. If you've surrendered to Jesus, it's a big deal. Because Jesus says, I'm going to hold you accountable for every careless word that you speak to the people around you. So I've got a few questions for you to think about this week. Here's the first question. Who can you start to encourage this week? This is an easy one. Somebody probably popped in your mind right there. Who can you start to encourage? Who can you just be nice to this week and encourage them? The second question is this. What is your heart filled with? I don't know what your heart is filled with. I can only evaluate my own heart. I can only evaluate, is mine filled with anger? Is mine filled with lust? Is mine filled with judgment? Is mine filled with all kinds of things? Is mine filled with the love of God? Is mine filled with the peace that only Jesus can bring? What is your heart filled with? The last question is this. Would the people around you be interested in Jesus based on the words you speak? Would the people around you, if you're a follower of Jesus, would the people around you be interested in Jesus based on the words that you speak? And not just the people you like. Not the people in this room. In fact, these are the people I'm worried about the least being interested in Jesus. They're here today. The people at your work, the people that work for you and the people you work for, your neighbor, the people at your gym, the people that you coach ball with. Would those people be more interested in Jesus or less based on how you've spoken to them? These are challenging questions. They're challenging questions for me. I quite honestly don't like asking them that much because they're convicting. But these are questions that get to the real question of what is in your heart. Let's pray together. God, we love you And thank you for who you are. Thank you for your son, Jesus, who comes and speaks truth to us. May we listen to the warning that he gives, that we will be judged by the carelessness of our words. May we remember that our words bring life or death to the people around us. And for everyone in this room who has trusted you as their Savior, I pray that we would consistently think, am I causing people to be more interested in Jesus or less based on how I speak to them? And for those who may be here today who have never trusted in Jesus, who have never asked Jesus to forgive them for their sins and realize that he died on the cross because he loved them, I just pray that they would know that the most important words that can ever be spoken in their life is that they are forgiven. When they trust in you, when they call on you and ask for forgiveness and recognize you as your Savior, that you speak life into them, literally new life, by telling them they are forgiven for their sins. And only you can speak those words because you are God. So I pray today that if they've never done that today they would, that they would talk with me or one of the pastors or ask how to do that. And we could share with them the life-giving words that you have spoken. God, we love you. We thank you. There is no other God to serve but you. It's in your name we pray.